Hello, everyone. Welcome to the community meetup, May 2026 edition. The weather's warming up, the flowers are blooming, and life's busy in LocalGov Drupal land, which we'll find out more about in a minute. Today, we're going to hear a little bit about people's experiences using elections in the recent elections. So we've got Victoria Hunt from Croydon, Michael Brown from Newcastle, maybe Chris as well. We'll check. Chris might want to share a few things. And
Happy to
Mayur
if you want. Yeah.
Patel. Hiya, Chris. Great. And Mayur Patel at Walsall. So we'll start with Victoria and then Mayur and Michael. And really, we're just going to sort of explore how they find it, what they were doing, how well it worked, things that went well, and things maybe that still need a bit of work. There is already a fair amount in the backlog or sort of issue queue, things that we know that are kind of need to be worked on. And then after that, I'm hoping that we've got Duncan and Dan from Ohalian, who are the developers or builders of the elections module, and Will, our product lead, and they're going to talk about the future, the next iteration, the next version. All right, I'm going to stop sharing. Victoria,
Yes.
how was it for
Hi.
you?
Great. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead. That'd be lovely.
Um, okay, lovely. So yes, so overall, like super positive. Electoral services really liked it. I mean, if I show you quickly what what they had last time, it was much less exciting. If I look at previous election results, they just had this very functional, very sort of got the job done Drupal guide, but they were that this was all they had. This was the information they needed to include, and it was all about all a very kind of manual job, very flat, no kind of exciting features that we have now, like we have the electoral map, which was screen grabbed a lot by local press and other people. And of course, the results timeline made it quite exciting on the day, being able to kind of show um, especially how close some of the wards were called. 441 was the last one, 6 minutes earlier, and these were literally being read out by the election returning officer. I think that's the term. Up on stage, and mad typing in the results section. Um, and of course, we've got the share of the vote as well. And we also have a feature around the election notices as well. So they were all in one place, as well as being elsewhere on the website in the lead up. I think there's a feature request there to be able to upload, instead of it just being a text box with links, to be able to actually upload um, web links and documents here, um, to be able to pull it through a bit. So it's a fewer clicks there. But yeah, so really well received. Much more dynamic. And let me just have a look at my notes. What I wanted to raise. So a couple of things that sort of got tweaked nearer the time was, we had that discussion over the voter percentage turnout and how that was being calculated. So up until about a week before the election, I think it was looking at the number of votes cast against the electorate, and actually it needed to be the number of ballot papers against the electorate. So we're very happy that got put in, and the comms team who I was sitting with were really impressed that it was automatically calculating, rather than me having to type that particular figure in. One bit of feedback I would say is that if it could be more than one decimal point, because in the case of the mayor, for example, it rounded it up to 41, but actually it was published as 40.5. something or other, and that, you know, when they're really interested in the difference in turnout, that can just sort of look, you know, the person looking over my head said, oh, that's different, and I just had to explain that it had been rounded up. So that's just a little bit of feedback that every decimal point matters. And then we also added, this was a new thing, we just added a text box, free text box underneath where you put the overall results in the back office. I think I can show you here. We added this in, and then I just got the source code from the old previous results and copied it in so that I had these templates ready to go on the day, because again, our electoral services said it was really important to not just have the number of spoils, but also to have the reasons for the rejected ballot papers, that they were all read out at the same time as all the number of votes and everything. So it had to be included. And our head of electoral services did say to me the week before, oh, if you like, we can, you know, not worry about it on the day and then just publish them in PDFs the following week. And I was thinking, oh goodness, we've done all this work to do these modules, and to have to duplicate the information in PDFs the following week is not where we want to be. So I was very happy that Adnan humoured me and built this special text box so I could get that in. That was really helpful. I was looking at my thing. The other thing we had to fix was some candidates like to run under the Labour Party, and some candidates like to run under Labour and Cooperative Party. And so we had, sorry, going back to the results. There you go, Labour Party. So we had this, we kind of had a split vote. And so I know that there's been some quick, amazing, miraculous workaround to combine Labour and Cooperative and Labour Party in the graph. But I think going forward, Will was proposing a change where you could have multiple names for parties that needed to be grouped together in the main charts, because our electoral services were very, very clear that you could not change in Croydon anyway. I don't know if it's different elsewhere, because we did see other boroughs using the term like Labour group, but we weren't allowed to do that. We had to have Labour and Cooperative Party, or as you can see down here, Labour Party. We weren't allowed to interfere with the descriptions of the candidates. So that was a learning. I didn't even really know about the Cooperative Party until this election. So you learn something new every day. Trying to think what else. I think the other thing that we did that was probably different from others is I think other people expected to manually be putting in all of the candidate data, but we decided there was too much risk there for human error, especially on the day. So we actually imported the data. So we created spreadsheets and importers so that we could import in advance all the candidates with these. This is dummy data, but because when we were testing it, I wanted to use dummy data and not the real candidate data. But yeah, we were able to import in advance, and this had all been signed off by electoral services, all the candidate names, the ward they were running in, and their party names, and get that all sense checked. And we could also import all the previous election results from 2022. That could all be imported. And well, we did import the eligible electorate because we were given those figures by electoral services. But then on the day of the election, I got given a different set of figures that were all slightly different. So I had to go through and manually update all of those. So there was no point importing those in advance. But it was handy to be able to just create these import spreadsheets and run them past the electoral services team and get them to check everything, rather than, because obviously they don't have access to this system, so I couldn't get them to come in and check all of these. And so there was that. And then one other thing we noticed was with the parties, some of them were missing, so we had to create these ourselves, and have a bit of a discussion about what party colours to use, and a little bit fiddly to change this. You couldn't just copy and paste. You had to manually type these out. But these are really small quirks. Overall, really thrilled. I think the other thing as well is with the Mayor of Croydon election, I ended up sending people this link, but actually the landing page is just this. But that maybe just doesn't really tell the full story. So I think Adnan and I both agreed that, because you wouldn't necessarily think to click on this, but this is the page that kind of tells the full story. So not sure whether that initial page is needed. Those are my notes of things to mention. Is there anything anyone wants to ask about?
Oh, loads of things people want to ask about, Victoria.
Okay.
I actually, it's interesting that you've ended on this page because I was having a look, like looking for screenshots, and I saw this one, and I was like, huh, okay, and I didn't see the link there below to kind of see the more
Right.
detail. It's
Yeah.
interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, just before we go into questions from people in the chat, in terms of roles, like you said, democratic services, you were sort of managing the content work on the website here on their behalf.
Yes.
Is that how you did it? They didn't have their own logins and were managing this.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
So they provided us with, ahead of time with the election notices, they provided us with the PDFs. So we did a bit of work to make accessible versions of those using LocalGov Drupal publications, again, it's kind of spreadsheet joy of getting it all checked off in advance. And then with this, I really, because there had been in previous elections. Before my time, that there had been unfortunate typos in candidate names that ended up in the local press. So they were very, very sensitive to that kind of thing happening. Which, of course, there's no finger pointing as to how that happened. These things happen. It could have been, wrong information being given in the first place, or it could have been an editor just having a very unfortunate, typo, doing it too quickly. So that's part of the reason why I wanted to do the importer, and I wanted to be able to have a spreadsheet that was signed off ahead of time, so that all of that was not all I had to worry about on the day was plugging in the numbers, and then I had someone from comms looking over my shoulder, marveling at how kind of well put together it all was. Yeah, no, to be honest, like electoral services were so run off their feet, they just wouldn't have had
Okay.
capacity to do this themselves. I think is yeah.
Yeah.
But I think in general the web team kind of are the owners of what gets published on the site. So this is no different really.
Okay. There's a question from Sanjeev, which is sort of related to this, which is, did you need to do an all-nighter to update real-time results? I was looking, it looked like the last one was at 4:30 or so, 4:50 in the afternoon.
It
Um,
was I was literally doing it real time, so I was publishing it at these.
mhm,
I mean, so we had two elections. We had the mayoral election, and then we had the ward election. All of the ballot papers for both elections were verified on Friday morning, so there was a lot of sitting around waiting. But then they only called the one election result, and that was the mayor election on Friday afternoon. So I
mhm,
was, I was there. I took the results, and I was done and dusted. Um, about half an hour after this, and then the next day the first results started coming in at about 11:40 or something, so it's quite slow. Sorry, scroll all the way to the bottom of the timeline. Sorry if I make you seasick. There you go, 10:53, and that was just a one-seat ward. That was the other thing I had to be really careful about, because when you're creating the election in LocalGov Drupal, you have to specify a default number of seats. And so I put in the number 3 because more than half of our wards have 3 seats. But as you can see, some of them have 1 or 2. So I had to be really careful about checking that each electoral area had the right number of seats, because otherwise I would have accidentally said that 2 people were elected instead of 1 or something like that. So that was
mhm.
it's stuff like that you kind of it does require attention to detail. Um, so this one again, I was just doing it all in real time. So I finished when the announcement finished. It was all published 2 minutes later.
Cool.
If that
Very good.
answers that if that answers that question.
Yeah, actually, Sanjeev, let us know. I'm going to keep that. There's quite a few questions, so I'll cover your questions, Victor, and then we'll come to Maya, and then we don't need to cover the same ones. So let me just scroll down. I think you've answered Javik's question, prepping all pages in draft to populate on the night. Yeah. Um,
Well,
David R.
funnily enough,
Yeah.
you could. Okay, so actually, there was a little glitch, I have to admit,
Hmm.
which luckily I discovered on the day of the mayoral election, so I only had one election to contend with, and I don't know if this is a Croydon glitch or an LGD glitch, but for some reason, when I was updating the number of votes for each candidate, if I then, so I went through and put in all the numbers of votes. If I then decided I didn't want to publish it yet and I wanted to save it in review, it was was blanking out all the votes. It wasn't letting me save it in review without blanking out the votes. But what I managed to do to work around it was if I saved it as published, it did save. And because nothing shows until you tick votes finalized, that was okay. So I was able to just publish it. It effectively was still in review, and someone could check it, and then I could publish that. But you have just reminded me. So although that kind of saved my bacon, that okay, it's fine. I can just save it as published, and I'll raise it as a bug that you can't save it in review. There was kind of a flip side that what you're seeing now, it looks really good when it's all populated, but in the lead up, it did look a bit empty because it just kind of said the name of the ward and it just said sorry, I keep going down. It just said the name of the ward and results pending. And actually it might have been quite nice to be able to see the names of the candidates in advance or which parties were standing in advance. It was just a little bit blank until
On
you
which page,
started
sorry? On the results page?
on the also, for example, on the ward pages, or
Okay.
even, in fact, I think one of your councils, I don't know if they're on this call, but they had done a modification so that they actually did have this table in advance and it had all the seats at 0.
Mm.
Whereas out of the box doesn't do that. It just has nothing here, and then it just has borough results pending. So I think it was Walsall maybe that said that
Very well.
they had spent a bit of money developing that. So yeah, that we liked what they had done with that.
We'll find
Yeah.
out. Maya's going to talk next. Okay, that's great. I'm glad to answer that question then. David asks, can you publish the verification statement with box counts in the same system?
I'm not sure what that means. Sorry.
Okay, I'm glad I'm not the only one. Okay,
Is
David,
this
I know Dave.
you mean the vote, the ballots being verified on Friday morning? I guess you could put it in election notices, maybe could go in there if that's what you're referring to.
Yes, that's what I mean. The verification bits.
Yeah.
That's useful for parties because we tally all the results and we use that to work out vote share ward by ward, not just the whole place. Or rather, polling district by polling district, not just the ward. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
I
Cool.
see.
So many
Okay.
notices. A more technical question, Victoria. Did you have any issues with caching? So
That's
the
a good
results sort of
question.
displaying immediately when
So,
you're updating things.
so our con team did raise that ahead of time, saying that in the past, it's taken a long time for the website to update. So what Adnan did was we took the path from below voting and elections, because that's where this was all sitting, and we introduced a variation on the cache. So we just for that section of the website, we only put a 5-minute limit on the cache, whereas normally it's longer than that. And so as a result of that, everything appeared within 5 minutes.
Brilliant. And Adam's did actually answer that in the chat, but that's great. Do you have analytics to understand how the pages were being consumed? It's another question from Sanjeev.
We do have
Or
an
have you had a
analytics.
look, I guess, yeah.
We do have an analytics module, yes. I don't know. I'm in the dev environment at the moment, and I'm not seeing it. So I wonder if it's not in the dev environment. But and I mean, this is a separate topic that we were actually talking to Will about just this morning. But we do have a module that we've developed that pulls in Google Analytics, so we know how many page views there were. Well, at least of people who accept our cookie banner. So we know, is that the question? We know which pages were visited and that kind of thing. Is that the question?
Victoria is actually just kind of understanding that, obviously we're looking at, this section of 5 subsections, and it's fascinating and lovely to see. It's just how it was being used, who was clicking on what, and whether there was some particular areas that people were really appeared to be interested in according to the analytics. Really, it was just.
So, I mean, our comms team drove quite a lot of the traffic. So they had a live blog running, and because I was sitting next to them, we were kind of able to work really closely on it. So they would put the name of the winners or as their live blog entry, and then they would link to the ward page, the individual ward page. And we did see as well on social media, we could see people taking an interest in their ward results and linking directly to those. So I think the individual ward pages were quite well received, and as I say, the map got some attention as well. And I also saw the share of the vote getting used elsewhere as well. But yeah, I mean we've so that's my overall impression, and then our analytics kind of show obviously more people came to the landing page, and then there's sort of fewer visits on the sub pages. But I mean, in terms of sort of, it almost sounds like a user testing question, like how do people navigate the module? And obviously we haven't done that because we didn't develop the module ourselves. We kind of just relate to the party and ask lots of difficult questions in the run up. But if there's scope for doing some sort of usability testing on it, or sort of proper user research on it, that sounds like a good idea if that hasn't already happened.
Good for future work. Yeah, thank you, Sanjeev. Victoria, thank you so much. This is fabulous to see, and thank you for sharing so much detail about how it worked. I'm glad it went well. It wasn't too laborious. Yeah. Mayur, hello. So you're going to share a little bit about what you found at Walsall. You're muted at the moment.
Hello, everyone. Yeah, if you can see my screen.
Yes.
So yeah, we were the original one who funded the very first draft version of this module. We actually contributed where we had this in our book of work, that because we had an all-out election and where there would be multiple winners per ward. So we were the original funder within the LGD Community Fund. And we had this version with us in December 2025, so last year. And we started working with regards to theming it. So we created an agnostic theme because, we also created for the general election results, not just for local elections. So we created an agnostic theme that can be applied across different kinds of election results. So yeah, we started working on this very early in this year, like January, February. But obviously, this version we are talking about was the initial version, the very first version that Rohalian released in December 2025. We had a very massive roadblock. I think we were the only one who hit this roadblock. So one of that roadblock was that Welsh Council had a vote boundary change in February 2024. And that was the reason why we had an all-out election this year. And one of the reasons we had this roadblock was that the vote boundaries are picked up from ONS data sets. And unfortunately, ONS did not have the vote boundaries because according to them, they are not responsible for providing the vote boundaries. And according to them, the vote boundaries technically come into effect following the election. So we were in a very big pickle with regards to this. And we had to then work with our GIS team, which is the Geospatial Initial team, to create an iShare base. So iShare is a software, like for example, ARCGIS is a software. iShare is a similar software. So it also Council we use iShare. So we had to use iShare equivalent feature server. And then we had to test across all 20 wards in very detail that is the vote boundaries that the iShare has provided matches with the one that LGBC is provided. I think the testing was the very big thing where we wanted to make sure that we are testing across all 20 wards. Again, and a piece of advice would be that from this learning, you can see that if you are a council who is trying to get this elections up and you have had a vote boundary change in the last 1 or 2 years, there is a 99% chance ONS will not have your updated vote boundaries. Even if the vote boundaries, like vote names have changed and the boundary is still there, or the vote boundary has changed and the vote name is still there, ONS will not have that because they are not responsible for this. LGBC is responsible. So I think the way advice will be to follow ours. I think plan as much as possible in advance, engage with the GIS team to create the boundary source data. Again, if you do not have an GIS support team available, the advice will be to contact LGBC. 9 out of 10 times LGBC publish your vote boundaries into the global search at the ARC-GIS. If they don't, LGBC are very good in terms of email reply. You can ask them and you can get the updated vote boundaries published on ARC-GIS, and from there you can call a feature server. We also did a final update. So as I remember, as I said earlier, we did a big work on theming on the very first update, but then there was a final update in March, if I'm not wrong, sorry. And where what we did was we worked around it. So for example, we tried to fix the bar chart. We also allowed the latchings on the electoral map where, where there are multiple winners on the votes. What we also did with our dev was that, what Victoria essentially highlighted earlier was that what we did was we pre-populated everything initially so that before the results are counted, there is something on the page. It's not empty looking page. And the reason for this was that because the snippets of this election module were going to be shown on the big screen by our election teams. So they wanted that to be initially there. And we worked with our devs to make it possible. Some key achievements and lesson learned, we had extremely popular feedback. The amount of screenshots that I've seen on Facebook, community posts on Twitter, especially of our module, especially the electoral map, were incredible. One good quote will be something like, "Thanks to the new module, we managed to update the results quickly and flawlessly, and our site stayed up and available the whole time despite the huge interest." I think our site stayed up came up because there were other councils who got a bad reputation because their site crashed or something. So that's the backdrop behind this statement. But we had a huge uptake. We had enormous numbers of unique views. Certain improvements we can ask for this module would be, term length, because if you remember, as I said, 3 councillors per ward. Every single councillors would be for a different term length. Also, something like an electoral hub, because, as Victoria also said, past election results, every council has a very different way they have stored. For example, Croydon have done it using guides. We have done using service pages. I think something like a electoral hub, like a directory, sort of where we said every archive results are over there, would be amazing. So yeah, that would be for me. Any questions? I'm very happy to take from.
Thank you, Maya. It's great to get a different view on it as well, and also the technical challenges you had at the beginning. Hiya, Michael. How did it go in Newcastle?
Very well. If you just give me 1 second, I've got some slides as well. Oh,
lovely.
So the first thing to say is we asked for public feedback following the election, and incredibly positive is the overall response. Vast majority of people very, very pleased with it. Comments, better than TV graphics. We had no issues with caching. It was the results were there. I mean, some people said that they refreshed the website as they heard the words, "and I now declare," and the results were there because we were listening in the other room. The only thing that really got picked out as any kind of negative feedback is that question relating to different variations of party names. In terms of the what's been said by the Electoral Commission before now, I actually went to them in 2024 and asked the advice on that in terms of what electoral services say against what the Electoral Commission say, and their response was, so long as the election notices are the election notices, anything we do on the web can be whatever we want it to be, so long as it works for users and helps get that information across. So if we need to change things to Labour Group to try and make it work for the purposes of share of votes, or if we need to do those sorts of things, so we can simplify to make it work. And sorry, I've lost my other screen. So yes, very, very, very positive. Some really nice comments. So I think the thing to say to everyone who's worked on it is fantastic. Well done, and thank you. We've obviously used every version of the system since version 1 now, so coming up 2 years, because we had it for the general election back in 2024. And compared to what we were doing before, it's far, far easier to update. So I think that's great. A lot of what we found is, as what's already been said. I mean, the results page, we hadn't spotted it before time, but it's district and borough is the type of election. We don't have district and borough wards. Candidate names, at the minute, they're block capitaled and reversed, even though in the system they're all lowercase. So they don't have to be that. So again, whether that fits with sort of GDS style that we're using for the rest of the website. There's also a slight inconsistency of numbers across the module. It's just 1,000 separator. One of the big things for us is we had lots of people on the results page. We were just under 50,000 users, individual users on the results page on election day, which actually knocked our site over twice. We had to increase the resource behind it. One of the big things that was being asked by people on election day was kind of what's happening when a vote's being counted. We were an all-out election. We had all 78 seats across 26 wards, and we split it. 13 counted in the morning, 13 in the afternoon. And having the ability to say that somewhere would have been useful. So that sort of extra information, even if it's a text box somewhere on there that we might look to add in terms of providing that information, or even a how many wards have been declared. You look at the BBC results and they have that little sort of ticker in the corner of that in terms of the total number of councils that have declared. But yeah, I mean, people seem to very much enjoy the results page and said it was clean and easy to see. In terms of election areas, again, it's that what does it look like before the information is there? Because it just says no results have been declared yet. Having the candidate information would be very useful. Having the details of things like the total electorate would potentially be beneficial. Again, I think it'd be worthwhile on the election areas page to have when votes are going to be counted, just for anybody coming to look at it. In terms of the back end, inputting candidate vote totals requires a lot of scrolling. I know by the end of the day, my hand was cramping up because we didn't have a lot of space on the desks and I didn't have a mouse, I was using a trackpad. So if there's any way of simplifying that, because when you're trying to add the votes, it's not that we're particularly changing any of the other candidate information at that stage. In terms of the election areas page as well, we also, some of our councillors couldn't find the information that's under analysis, which they require for some of their electoral returns. So a few of them contacted the returning officer suggesting we'd taken it off the website. It was always there, but that might be a consideration in terms of that page as to whether some of that basic information is moved higher up. There is a bug with the election areas page that we found, which is once the votes have been finalised, some of us can't change the content of the pages. On election day, we had one member of staff who was able to do it. They're now on holiday, and we have subsequently noticed that a typo has been made in a councillor name, but we're not currently able to change it. I know that someone has suggested unfinalising the vote, saving it, making a change, and then refinalising the vote might work. It's not working for us. So if anybody has any ideas, it is logged as a bug on the on Drupal.org. So
you could just remove the candidate and re-add them. I had a similar issue in testing.
We will give it a try. Yeah, because it's obviously we want to make sure that their name is sorted out, because our electoral services manager asks every 24 hours, has it been sorted yet? And that'll come on to something else I'll come on to later, just in terms of integrations. Results timeline, I think looked great. I think people were looking at it. It was the third most viewed of the elections pages, after the main page and the map. Everybody loved the map, so I don't have a slide on that because that there is genuinely no feedback. It worked incredibly well. Results timeline, I think it's just, as I say, how you make it really clear in terms of party. I know obviously it's listing party above name, but just from a colour wise, whether some of those bars and things just need to be wider, or the elected box takes the colour of the party. Share of the vote, again, ability to add more information and notes, particularly for an all-out election, because it totals the votes, and obviously it's 3 times the number of votes if you're talking an all-out election compared to the number of electors. Also, whether it's, I just wonder whether share of the vote is the only thing that we would want to show on there. I know from the Electoral Commission reports, they have a sort of an elections in numbers section, where they have more details of overall electorate, total number of candidates, number of postal votes, and then percentage turnouts for all those different things. Whether this page kind of becomes more of a election in numbers page might be something to consider, and that then could feed into that sort of hub idea that was mentioned before. Yeah, and also if we're thinking in terms of multiple elections being linked together, is there a way of, you know, comparative figures, comparative turnout between elections? Because again, that's the sort of question where we've got journalists milling about and say, well, you know, your turnout's at 44.8%. What does that mean compared to 2024, 2023? We do it for the purposes of social graphics, and we have those sort of set up separately, but actually something that auto calculate it would be very useful. Yeah, future developments. I think we now obviously we go back to thirds as well. So it's linking those single seat elections back to what has been a multi-seat election and just how we do it, particularly in terms of displaying the uncontested vote. Our elections team have asked a question around integration with other systems. They use Express, which is Civica, to populate their election notices. So is there any integration that's being considered in terms of auto-populating from the election notices to the system? Because particularly in terms of typos for something like a name, which we've had in this instance, I think they're feeling that once they're happy with election notices, they don't want to have to be double checking things from a web point of view. Also, if there's then any way of exporting that information back out to sort of set up the new councillors on any committee system. But that's probably a question that then ties in far more to the modern gov replacement system that I know has been talking about from a community fund. So that might be a separate discussion, but I suppose it's, from our point of view, yeah, it worked very, very well. I think we're very happy with it. Public seem to be very, very happy with it. It's now just, you know, how can we make sure that we can keep using this for years to come? And happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Michael. Fantastic. Lots of really rich feedback as well. It's really nice to see the positive feedback at the start. Always start positively and then, you know, lead into what could be improved. Very nice. I guess one thing, maybe a response from Victoria, and then I'm going to come to Will and Duncan and Dan. Just on the naming of the results page, you said district and borough results and you were ward results, and that was something that Victoria found. And I think did you fix that sort of just custom quick implementation fix on the Croydon site? Is that right? There's still an open issue, I think, for it. It looks like.
I believe that's right. I think Adnan's on the call.
Yeah. Okay.
Because we didn't push it up because we knew it wouldn't be right for everyone. So it was customized for us. And then also I noticed the electoral map was duplicated heading, had a H1 electoral map, and then the map was labeled electoral map. So Adnan changed that to Croydon wards for me. So yeah, I think that was a general thing about being able to customize the headings according to our relevant quirks.
Yeah, got it. Cool. Thank you. Great. Okay, so to the future, Will and Duncan, I guess maybe Will, you're going to kick us off and just sort of.
So, excuse me, I'm just going to say something sort of general.
Yeah. And
then Duncan and Dan, I think if it's okay with you, you're going to talk more about where we think the next version is going to sort of where you're going to spend time. Are you on the call? Can you?
Yes, yeah.
Is that all right with you?
Yeah.
Awesome. So I mean, the first thing I'd like to say is thank you to everybody who took part in this. Some of this functionality came together at the last minute. There was a lot of very rigorous testing that we're very grateful for, and all the people who jumped on issues just in the sort of last sort of week or two to really make this a success. So thank you to everybody, and to the folks who came on the call and showed these things and gave us that feedback. It's awesome. Like basically, this is what LocalGov Drupal is about. It's a collaborative effort. Like as a group of councils, we don't have to do all this on our own. We can pool our resources. We can do a better job overall. And I think we're showing with this already, we're doing a better job than any other software on the market. I'm going to shut up in a second, but what I'm going to say is the next round of work is going to cost quite a lot of money because it's all the proportional representation stuff that's coming in the mayoral elections. It's complicated. It'll be better, like democracy wise, but it's going to cost money to realize. So please don't sit back and wait for somebody else to pay for this. Like, you're all councils, you've got budgets. Consider chipping in either time or money or dev time in the way that, say, Croydon did, and testing time. Please do chip in. Don't sit back and wait for other people to carry the can for you. This is a collaborative effort that we all benefit from. So Aaron's going to horsewhip me off the stage for saying that.
No, no, not at all.
Hopefully it was necessary. But Duncan and Dan, over to you. Do you want to tell everybody where we think this is headed?
Yep. So as Will said, the next one is the English mayoral elections in May 2027, but which is using a version of PR. But over the next 5 years, there are 7 elections which are all based on PR. We've got obviously English mayoral. We've then got Scottish Council elections, the elections to the Northern Ireland Assembly, Welsh Council elections, then London Assembly, and I think new English mayors in like 2028. Then there's the election to the Synod in Wales in 2030, and also then the Scottish Parliament in 2031. And all of those run variants of PR. I think the thing to say is that we're not going to do PR, that we are solely going to report the results that are generated by whatever system councils are using. And so, it's we're not looking to do any form of calculations or work that does calculations. In this is purely a reporting mechanism that will take results and display them in user-friendly ways. There's, as Will said, it's going to cost money. There is complexity because we've got to store all these results. Michael's comment about getting hand cramp, I think inputting PR results, he might break his arm. So we need to really spend a lot of time getting the user interface from an editor's perspective right for putting PR results in. The good news is that there may be solutions where we can import the results, and I know in the Scottish Council elections in May 27 that the Scottish government in their tender exercise did define that there had to be an export format for this. So the electronic counting for those elections will produce output that we can then consume, and so there will be no manual effort to import those. So there, hopefully for some of the other elections, there will be similar solutions that can be leveraged to make it easier for Michael's hand. So I think, Will said, yes, it's going to cost money, but I think from our perspective, I've put together a document that outlines the sort of these 7 elections, what potentially the challenges are around each of them and things like that. I think in the first instance, what we need, the ask from us as the developers, is actually for time from councils, particularly from the staff in democratic services. They are the subject matter experts. They know about this. They will know what's happening. They'll know what needs to be reported, how it should be reported. And therefore getting someone from each of the areas, so essentially Wales, Scotland, England, Northern Ireland, potentially one for London as well, because obviously the London mayoral elections will be there as well, getting somebody from a council in each of those areas who's in democratic services, who knows this, to spend time helping us refine and define the specification is going to make the process a lot easier and potentially avoid a number of the issues that we encountered in the run up to these elections, where we had to make last minute changes because there was things, the majority of us are not experts in elections, and therefore we don't know these things. So getting them involved now should mean a smoother run, and a lot of these issues are found and resolved before we get to implementation, and it should make it easier. But yeah, I think once we've got that specification, it should mean also that it costs less because we've got a tighter specification that we know is going to work, and I think that's it. So yeah, I think unless Dan's got anything else to add, my ask is for councils to put time in and get somebody from democratic services to engage with this process.
Just one thing. I mean, thank you to all the councils who've used this and fed back today. It is slightly frustrating that we're hearing about issues that we could have known about and fixed had we had that input sooner. So it's just an object lesson for us and for the next version to get that input sooner, and so that we feel like we can produce a better product, basically.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Duncan. I think we will follow up on this and put that ask out. I can do it in the follow-up email for this meetup and share with your teams. We're already doing this with the committee management, so there's quite a lot of asks, and it's also a busy time of year for Dem services. So there's probably and we're going into summer.
I think very briefly, Aaron, I think it might just be in two parts. So there's a wee bit of discovery I think we could do, which is what Duncan's talking about. It's like what specifically are we building and when? And there'll be a cost to run that discovery, but it won't be great. It'll be more the time that councils put in to help us. And I think that will make a spec that will have a price tag attached. And then hopefully it's just something we can split a few different ways. And then it becomes very, very affordable for the councils that put time and money in. I think this time round, can't remember exactly, but I think it was maybe sort of 3 or 4 councils each doing a couple of days. So, it's under £5,000 per council, like maybe even less than that in some cases. So we don't know yet, do we, Duncan? I'm not going to write a check for you, but if the more councils that put in, the more time we spend over the spec, the better this gets for everybody. So we'll make sure that you hear about these opportunities, and hopefully you'll want to.
Yeah, I think the thing is, is if we can look at it, all 7 in the whole, we can make sure we're implementing something that will support PR no matter what the variant, because we've got there's weighted inclusive Gregory, simple Gregory, Dehont, additional member. There's so many different variants.
Weighted Gregory. What is weight? I don't want
Let's
to
not go there now.
I don't know. But I just know that's what's being used. So I think we need to, and then there's things like additional member systems, which is basically 2 elections running at once. So you've got your first past the post, and also your PR, which then combine to form the overall. So as in the Scottish Parliament or the Welsh Parliament, they use AMS. So yeah, it's all these things. We need the experts who can tell us what's going to be reported out for each of them, and so we can see commonalities, etc.